Welcome to this week's episode of the Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Firstly, as per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. A big thank you to Cavallan for liking and retweeting my tweet and all that kind of stuff. And it just goes to show that even if you are sort of a little bit critical of a distillery or a bottle or what have you, as long as you're I think fair and honest, then it's all about sort of a dialogue at the end of the day. And I don't think anybody ever sets out to sort of bottle poor quality whiskey. It's all about perception, isn't it? My perception may well be different to somebody else's perception, to the distillery blender, whatever. It's all sort of, like I say, it's all a personal thing. And so, like I said, these evaluations are obviously wholly my own opinions, and I always encourage people, you guys, the viewers, to sort of try things out yourself. Maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't. It's part of the sort of like the wonderful thing of whiskey, isn't it? Anyway. So on to today's episode of the show. It looks a bit of an odd lineup, to be honest with you, but it's a kind of a viewer's choice, I suppose. Good friend of mine, Guy Dutton, kindly sent me a number of samples, not expressly to do an episode of the show, but I guess that was part of the it was kind of like, I'd just like to know your opinions on these particular bottlings, so it just seemed like an ideal thing to do. And if you're of a similar kind of mindset and you just want my opinion on some whiskies and stuff, it doesn't necessarily have to be half a dozen. If you just sort of want to send me a couple of samples, I can always try and fit them in with other things, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I really appreciate the generosity from Guy for the samples, and hopefully I won't disappoint him and disappoint you guys with my my findings. So there's not really an awful lot to say, to be honest with you. So let's just take a look at today's lineup. Right, okay, so first two bottlings we'll be looking at today are kind of really intriguing to me because they're from the Daftmill Distillery. Bit of a daft name if you ask me, but there you go. And I've never tasted anything from the distillery, don't have any direct dealings with the distillery whatsoever, don't really know anything about the distillery apart from it's in the lowlands, and so yeah, I'm really quite looking forward to this. They appear to be that they do batch bottlings. The first bottling we're going to be looking at is the winter batch release from 2019. It's a 12-year-old, and it consists of, I think, 8 casks, number 23, 24, 25, 27, 32, 35 and 38, all first fill bourbon. Like I said, 12 years old, bottled at 46%. The second bottle we'll be looking at is the summer batch release from the same year. It's an 11-year-old. Now you might think it's a bit weird that I'm doing the slightly older bottling before the younger bottling, but hopefully all will be revealed when I actually get round to tasting them. This is a vatting of 6 first fill bourbon casks, number 56, 58, 60, 62, 65 and 66. Like I said, distilled in 2008, bottled in 2019, 11 years old at 46%. So really quite looking forward to those, as it's a distillery I know absolutely nothing about whatsoever. Bottling number 3 is the first of, well, sort of 2 Clynelishes. The first is the Distillery exclusive. It's a no age statement bottling. It's 48%. Looking at the colour, I would imagine American oak, and all I can tell you is that it was bottled in 2017. Whether it's still available at the distillery, I have absolutely no idea. One would imagine not. They've probably moved on to another bottling. The second Clynelish isn't actually labelled as Clynelish, it's just a Highland single malt, and it's allegedly Clynelish. This is a Gleann rare find Highland single malt, 27 years old, distilled in 2014, bottled this year, apparently bottled for somebody called Stuart Smith, who works at Royal Mail Whiskies. Don't know the chap, don't have any dealings with Royal Mail Whisky, but you know, this it's bottled at 50.1% and it's 27 years old, so looking forward to that one. The penultimate bottling is a distillery bottling. It's a Glenglassaugh rare cask release 2011, 8 years old, bottled at 55.2%. It's their peated spirit, aged in an ex-rum cask, cask number 2 apparently. It was bottled for a company called TimeDrumWhiskey.com. Again, don't know them at all. I've have no dealings with them. And it was distilled in May of 2011, bottled at 2020, and like I said, 8 years old. And the last bottling we'll be looking at is another Glenglassaugh, or nice twos as it comes. This is a Bramble Whisky Company. Again, never heard of them. So again, lots of firsts for me, it has to be said. So it's a Bramble Whisky Company, Glenglassaugh. It's 6 years old. It's peated spirit, matured in first fill Oloroso. And yep, it looks like it's the colour seems to give that one away. It's distilled in December 2011, bottled in June of 2018. Like I said, 6 years old, bottled at 53.5%. So an interesting lineup, I think you'll agree, and let's kick off with a bit of Lowland then. Right, okay, so like I said, this is the 2007 12-year-old, so it's a 2019 winter batch release. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Right, it's quite an alcohol prickle for 46%. A straw, apricot, it is really straw-like. There's rose petal mark, elderflower, a bit of musky, dusty spice, touch of citrus. There's that sort of slight kind of strawberry mousse, youthful note kind of going on. Not a lot of oak at all, practically no oak. So first fill bourbon, I was quite surprised at how little impact that's had. So I guess in a manner of speaking you could say it's kind of like allowing you to see the distillery character, and it's kind of quite, I'd say quite old school Lowland in actual fact. It's not one of the more modern sort of Lowland, big, fruity, estery kind of spirits. It's very much old school. It's kind of, like I said, it's citrus, it's barley, it's straw, a little bit of earth, and it's obviously just needs a little bit more time than 12 years old, because this has got a really quite sort of marry, rose petally kind of edge to it. Anyway, let's see what parts like. Fresh, lightly oiled, again straw, meadow flowers, elderflower, barley. It's a bit hot on the finish. That alcohol really isn't particularly integrated, and I think the problem is that there's no oak character whatsoever, and it's just not holding it together at all. The spirit is just too hot, and like I said, that alcohol is really not contained. It's really quite hot. It's a little bit of citrus, but I mean, it's intriguing, it's interesting, but I mean, I looked up what, if you wanted to buy that now, you'd have to fork out somewhere in the region of €225 or £192 for a bottle of that, and, well, frankly, on this tasting, I wouldn't be paying that for it. I don't know what the release price of it was, but I really think that like I said, it's interesting. It's given you an insight into the character of the distillery, but it shows that it either needs more time, and it definitely needs some, if not a little bit of, you know, oak to balance up the flavours. So yeah, okay, I'm not kind of blown away by that one. Right, okay, so let's move on to the summer batch from 2019. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Right, well that's straight off the bat, it's a better nose, it's weightier, oilier, there's actually some oak, there's a reasonable amount of oak, and it's giving a sort of a lovely sweetness, it's kind of emphasising the barley. There's some marzipan amongst the straw, the apricot. Again, there's a little bit of youthfulness, there's a little bit of rose petal mar, but the addition, the fact that it's got some oak character is just not leaving the spirit isolated, if you see what I mean. And so it just actually feels a little bit more evolved. It feels more complete, and it's a lot more of a pleasant nose. Yeah, that's actually really quite pleasant. Let's see what that's like. Soft, weighty, oily. Again, it's got some lovely integrated oak. It's soft. There's some vanilla. Again, straw, barley, touch of apricot. Again, youthfulness, a little bit of rose petal mark, but again, it's all quite balanced and contained. Now, it's interesting how they are bottling these as you know, winter release and summer batch and a winter batch. Now I'm guessing that is not the time of the release but the time of the distillation. Now one assumes that as in most distilleries, what you tend to find is that obviously during the winter it's colder, you get a little bit more reflux, and so you get sort of a slightly lighter spirit. In the summer, obviously the still house is slightly warmer, you get a little bit less reflux, you get a little bit more oils coming over, and certainly it kind of works. It seems to say that between these two bottlings, and maybe of the summer release the additional oak character is kind of, you know, giving it a bit more of a weighty feel. I mean, and that is, there is a truism there, but it certainly does feel like the spirit has a little bit more weight if you just kind of to a certain extent ignore all of the oak. So interesting. Again, I think if you wanted to buy this particular bottle, it's being offered for sale around about 180 euros or 153 pounds. Again, personally, I wouldn't pay that for it, and like I said, I don't know what it was, what it cost on release, but hopefully it was considerably less than that, because obviously I think asking 150 odd pounds for either of those two bottlings is asking a little bit too much. But like I said, that's the secondary market for you. So yeah, I thought that one was not too shabby. Right, okay, so let's move on to the distillery exclusive Clynelish. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Not getting a great deal, to be fair. It's not as kind of oily and as waxy as you would expect from Clynelish. It's kind of pretty much the opposite. It's kind of green fruit, apple, lime, gooseberry. It's got even a sort of a little bit of an industrial note there as well. I'm not getting a great deal of oak. There's a bit of almost kind of green tobacco leaf. Frankly, I'm really not warming to this whatsoever. It's kind of, it's almost verging on the rough side, to be honest with you, and I'm really quite surprised that somebody selected this. I'm guessing it's a vatting of, it's not, I don't know, is it a single cask? Who knows, could be a vatting, several casks. It's certainly not what you would expect from Clynelish whatsoever. And certainly I think if I picked this up from the distillery, you know, spend all the time and effort going to the distillery and then this is what you can pick up from the distillery, well, It's a little bit of a poor show, it has to be said. Anyway, let's see what Pat's like. It's still pretty raw, it has to be said. There's a little bit more waxiness, there's a little bit more oiliness, there's a little bit more fruit, but there's no length. It's really hot, it's kind of industrial, a bit of gooseberry, bit of lime. I mean, it really is a bit sort of like ho-hum, you know. It's just you know, you go all the way to the distillery and you're presented with this. I mean, it really is quite a disappointment, it has to be said. I don't think putting any water is going to absolutely help that whatsoever. In natural fact, it's probably going to do completely the opposite. Let's just try it out. And I mean, I know it does that because I've already tasted it, but so I'm just kind of like torturing myself a little bit more, I suppose, on this one. Okay, so the nose is a little sweeter. There's a little bit of that kind of sugar-coated citrus rind, a little bit of orange rind, possibly. It's a little bit more oak, it's softer, it's a little bit of toffee, it's just not particularly complex. And to be fair, that nose is more appealing with a little drop of water. Let's see what the Pat's like. Sugar water and industrial barley. God damn, that is really not very good whatsoever. And I hate to say it, but you know, like I said, you know, I think if I'd have bought this as a distillery exclusive, you expect something pretty damn good, don't you? You know, and I'm afraid this just isn't really. Right, okay, so let's move on to the second of the Clynelishes. This is the rare find 27-year-old. I've not heard from Gleann more in ages. I remember sort of doing an episode of the show on them not so long ago. Well, actually, probably was quite so long ago. But anyway, I believe that they decided they were no longer going to send samples out. So anyway, just nice to see what this is like then, shall we? That's a lovely nose. That is gorgeous. Dusty, mature, waxy, oily, baked apple, barley, gooseberry. I mean, that is lovely. It's aromatic. It's full. Loads and loads of character. It's got sort of maturity, but it's got a freshness there as well. It's got what you would expect from Clynelish, a little bit of a waxiness. You know, waxy sort of fruit skin, sort of lemon sort of skin. There's a bit of vanilla, there's some toffee, there's some oak, mature oak as well, a little bit of granite as well. I mean, stunning, absolutely stunning, it has to be said. And you know, it just goes to show you that Clynelish does indeed produce some gorgeous spirit. So why, you know, I know I'm going to get, well, I'm not going to get a visit from the distillery manager to kneecap me, but you know, anyway, let's focus on this one. Let's focus on. All I can say is, if this Stuart Smith selected this particular cask, he picked a damn good cask. That's all I can say. That's a gorgeous nose. See what the Pat's like. Full, soft, juicy, generous, slightly oily again, slightly waxy, apricot, dusty fruit, baked apple. It has that lovely sort of baked oxidised fruit character, lovely maturity, but there's a freshness there as well. There's a touch of citrus. There's that sort of Highlandy kind of granity note as well. The length is gorgeous. A lingering, slightly waxy fruit, apricot, lemon, A little bit of caster sugar as well on the finish. I mean, that is absolutely gorgeous. Really nicely balanced. Again, like I said, it's got a really good balance between the maturities and the sort of like the granity freshness. It's, like I said, it's classic Clynelish. It's got that lovely waxiness, but it's got that balance to it as well, that balancing freshness. And you can see why blenders kind of love this stuff. Because it is just absolutely gorgeous. Got a lovely mouthfeel, complex, and yeah, you can build in some additional flavours around it, and it's just going to sort of like, you know, really sort of work nicely with it as part of a blend, as John Claser at Compass Box has aptly demonstrated on numerous occasions. So, but anyway, coming back to this particular bottling, that was good. Right, okay, so let's move on to the first of the two Glenglassaughs. So, peated spirit aged in rum cask. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Oh, that's no shrinking violet. Phenolic, earthy, intense, salty. There's a little bit of a rum sweetness. It's quite subtle in actual fact. It's not a sort of like, you know, in your face kind of rum. It's certainly peat, you know, and you're not going to miss the peat on this whatsoever. There's a little bit of sort of banana, apricot, sort of slightly tropical rummy fruits, a little bit of honey. There's a little bit of sort of youthfulness. There's a slight hint of kind of off the still note there. I mean, after all, this is only 8 years old, but it kind of works. There's a little bit of spice, you know, sort of gingery, soft spice. That's gorgeous. I mean, again, it's really nicely balanced. Yes, there's a fair amount of peat, but I'm getting sort of like you know, getting a bit of sort of a bit of barley, a bit of sort of spirit. I'm getting a little bit of the rum cask. That's just pretty damn well balanced, it has to be said. So whoever selected this particular cask has selected what appears from the nose anyway to be a very, very good cask. Let's see what that pal's like. Warming, oily, a little bit more rum cask. It kind of kicks off more with that kind of rummy, dried banana, apricot, pineapple, honey. The peat just starts to come through on the mid palate. It's actually got quite a pepperiness to it as well. Nice saltiness which kind of lingers throughout the finish. I think the sort of the balance of the salt and the alcohol is kind of keeping that sort of rum sweetness in check. Certainly the rum kind of runs out of steam a little bit on the finish, so you get some barley, you get some sort of apricot, vanilla, caramelly note as well. So yeah, I like the progression of that. I think that's really good. And yes, it's young, but it kind of works really nicely. That, like I said, the alcohol, the salt, and possibly the youthfulness just kind of like really work to sort of like, you know, just take the edge off the sweetness of the rum cask. Let's put a little drop of water with it. I don't really think it actually needs water. I mean, it's 55.2, but it really doesn't taste like that, to be fair. And so that just goes to show you how well integrated the alcohol is, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. Like I said, you know, you take for example the going back to the Clynelish, I hark on about it, but it's only 48%, but the alcohol really stands out. Whereas this 55%, you would expect the alcohol to stand out, but it's not. It's really nicely integrated. Anyway, let's see what the nose gives us now then, shall we? A little bit more crystallised citrus, orange, lemon, white fruits, honey, less peat. The peat is almost kind of like, you know, disappeared, to be frank. But yeah, I'm getting a load of distillery character, I'm getting a load of freshness, that white fruit, barley, a little bit of oiliness as well. I mean, I like Glenglassaugh. I mean, it's, you know, as what's the terminology that it was often used with Glenglassaugh? It's an awkward malt, but on this, I think it's absolutely lovely. I like a bit of awkwardness, to be honest with you, as long as it's not kind of roughness, but this is gorgeous. Let's see what the pal's like now. And the water has really brought out the oiliness of the spirit. Combining that with that slightly oily, rummy character, it's all kind of like got a bit muted, to be fair. It certainly lacks the intensity. Again, the peat seems to have disappeared. There's a faint whiff of it in the aftertaste. So basically, on this tasting, on this evidence, I think you really don't need to put any water with this whatsoever. Even though, like I said, it's over 55%. You know, if you do have a bottle of that, or pick up a bottle of that, then just drink it neat, because it's just really on point. So lovely. Okay, so let's move on to the final whisky of this afternoon. This is, like I said, the Bramble Whisky Company 6-year-old Glenglassaugh peated spirit first fill Oloroso. Yep, that's a first fill Oloroso cask for you. Full stop. Sherry. Yes, so it's dried fruit, it's prunes, it's raisin, fig, date, stem ginger, ginger powder, cinnamon bark, a little bit of licorice, treacle. It's sherry. I mean, you know, yes, you get a plethora of the sherry character, you know, like I said, but there's no light and shade. It's just sherry. There's a pleasant sweetness to the sherry fruit. It's got that sort of slightly sweet citric kind of character. A little bit of like, it's not overly dark is what I'm kind of getting at. It's got a little bit of lightness as far as sherry casks kind of go. Yeah, I mean, it's not my cup of tea at all. I mean, I don't get any Glenglassaugh character whatsoever. I mean, to be bluntly honest with you, even the peat is pretty much hidden by the sherry. I mean, there's a little bit of smoke there. There's a little bit of, I think there's some salt, but I'm kind of possibly imagining it, because all I can smell really is sherry cask, and it's not my cup of tea at the end of the day. It's clean, I'll give it that, and you know, if you like this kind of whiskey, then I'm sure you'll love it. But it's all right. There's a bit of it's a bit of coastal note, but you know. Anyway, let's see what Pat's like. Again, lots of sherry, raisins, sultana, stewed apple, toasty oak, bitter tannins, slightly chocolatey bitter tannins, cinnamon, ginger, wood, tannins on the aftertaste. I mean, although they're not kind of overtly bitter, they are certainly noticeable. They're drying, they wouldn't quite go as far as saying dusty, but they have that kind of quality to them. A little bit of green peat kind of coming through on the aftertaste. Again, it's kind of like once the sherry kind of starts to sort of dissipate out, you get a little bit of peat coming through. You don't get any distillery character, there's no barley, no anything like that whatsoever. Not really much in the way of salt. I mean, it's got an intensity from the alcohol, which again is sort of stopping it becoming overly sweet. But it is a sherry monster at the end of the day. I'll put a little drop of water with it and see what happens, because sometimes sherry characteristics do kind of lessen to a certain extent when it's diluted, and you get a little bit of something else. Not really in this case. It's kind of I'm getting a bit more charred oak, possibly burnt wood, burnt toffee, not quite so sweet, a little bit more bitterness possibly. Again, no oak, no peat whatsoever. Again, you know, I think sort of there's really no need to put any water with this particular bottling, because it doesn't really do it a great deal of favour. Anyway, let's see what it passes like. Simpler, oilier, a little bit homogeneous, although there's a bit of kind of like honeycomb now, I guess. Again, no peat. Peat has disappeared. It's a bit sort of like sherry, and yeah, that's pretty much about it. So not, like I said, it's not a bad whiskey. It's just not my kind of cup of tea. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. Firstly, like I said, big thank you to Guy for these samples. I think it was quite a really intriguing tasting, and like I said, you know, if you want me to review some whiskies that you have that you really like, you know, feel free to you know, to pop me some samples in the post. Like I said, it doesn't have to be 6. You can just send me a couple, and you know, they can either be sort of worked in with other ones if I have the have them knocking about, or anyway. So today's episode, the Daftmill, interesting. Very much in the way, like I said, old school kind of lowland. It's kind of nice to be fair, to sort of see that. I mean, because a lot of the newer lowland distilleries have gone down the route of kind of long fermentations, very estery worts, and you know, very soft, very fruity kind of new make spirit to get a sort of a product out really quickly, which I've got no issue with, because it's a style of spirit that I really enjoy. But it's just kind of nice to see a bit of a throwback. The winter batch release, yeah, it just needed some oak. There was no oak there. I mean, that was the real problem with it, and it just kind of left the spirit exposed, and the spirit was just saying it's too young, not enough character, and really quite hot. And it just goes to show you how, I think that's a perfect example of showing you how important the role of oak is in whiskey. I know it might sound like a stupid thing to say, but you know, it is all part of the overall sort of picture of a whiskey. And you know, everything is quite important to a certain extent, but it's just these sort of tastings show you how important getting the oak balance right is. And when they do get it right, you get the 2008 summer release, which is bloody good. And this is the sort of thing that you think, yeah, that's a lovely old-fashioned lowland whiskey, and just absolutely gorgeous. Again, like I said, really nicely balanced. I think I've said enough about the Clynelish, and I expect probably one of Diageo's henchmen to come round and want to kneecap me, because it really was seriously disappointing, and we'll kind of leave it at that. The Gleann bottling for Royal Mile whiskies. Now, I mean, that was gorgeous. That really was lovely. It just showcased how lovely Clynelish can be, and full stop. Just don't really need to say very much more, do I? The Glenglassaugh rum cask, again, lovely whiskey, really nicely balanced, didn't need any water whatsoever, although like I said, it was 50 odd, 55.2%, and just spot on, just really nicely balanced, and an all-round lovely whiskey. And the final one, the Sherry Monster. Okay, like I said, if that is your kind of cup of tea, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. plenty of sherry character. I mean, I've tasted less complex sherry monsters, to be fair. So at least there was some wood character along with the sort of like the sherry and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it really didn't have the sort of, you know, the complexity and the balance, and certainly the light and shade of the rum cask Glenglassaugh. But like I said, that's purely my personal opinion. So anyway, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been an interesting and slightly eclectic episode this week. And like I said, if you want me to review your favourite whiskies or some stuff that you happen to have knocking about, just like I said, stick a few samples in the post and I will do so. So anyway, until next time, it's good dramming and good afternoon.